Land and Youth Digital Conference. My name is Betty Ajay, and it's been a true privilege to journey with you from the opening plenary to this moment. Before we begin, whilst we are still waiting for our colleagues to join us, let's just take note of this quick housekeeping notes. First, please know that this session is being recorded. And second, if you'd like to ask a question, you can use the question and answers function or the chat. We'll come to them later in the conversation. And interpretation is available in French, Spanish, and Portuguese. You'll find the option at the bottom of your screen. And fourth, this is a safe space. Please feel free. And everyone, ensure that you uphold integrity, respect each other's when we are commenting, and let's also actively listen to whatever conversation is going on. And finally, we would have additional instructions and resources shared in the chat as we go along during this conference. So please keep an eye on the chat box. Would love to know where you are joining us from in the room, so please take a moment to introduce yourself in the chat. Share your name, your organization, and then where you are joining us from. I'm Betty. I am representing the Green Africa Youth Organization, and then I'm joining from Accra, Ghana. Please let those introductions flow in the chat. 2 days ago, we opened with stories of identity, stories of dignity and belonging. We were reminded that land is never just about the property, it's about memory, it's about culture and the future. Today, as we close, we return to those reflections with one question in mind. How do we carry these voices forward, these discussions forward to action towards COP30 and even beyond? As promised, let me tell you a story. At the age of 22, I began working as a project coordinator in Accra, Ghana. And one of my first tasks was to partner with the municipal assembly, the local assembly in Ghana, to secure a land for a project that would create jobs and improve waste management in the community. I still remember walking into the assembly, sitting down at the director's office and explaining the important project. Following all what I said, he looked at me and he said, "You are 22 years, you are a female. What can you do?" Those words cut deeply. They did. But instead of me being remorseful about it or it stopping me, it rather fueled me and my team. Together, we proved ourselves. The project not only succeeded, it became one of the best models of waste management in Ghana. And it recently won the Earthshot Prize. And the assembly itself testified that our work has reduced their community waste management costs and even helped them win recognition as the best assembly in sanitation. This experience taught me that while age and gender stereotypes may create barriers or even perseverance, I feel like perseverance and evidence of impact can break them down and create lasting change. In many ways, this is exactly what this session or this closing session should be about. Inspiration, gathering the wisdom we have shared, confronting the barriers we face, and co-creating and reflecting together a pathway forward. One phrase that really stayed with me came from the session on Indigenous and Afro-descendant youth using digital media to preserve nature. And they said, "Use it or lose it, pharmacy of the future." Wow. This is just one of the many insights we've gathered or we've heard during this conference. And now would love to hear from you, our participants, what resonated most with you over these days. Please share in the chats and we'll do well to bring in those voices as the conference unfolds. Let's hear from you what resonated with you. Now, to hear more on reflection, allow me to introduce two incredible individuals today who would walk us through the key highlights and takeaways from 8 sessions over the last 3 days. To begin with, Luis Beccaro is a data management consultant at the Land Portal and a PhD researcher in development studies at Bonn University. He has expertise in data-driven land governance and humanitarian assessments and community-based conflict resolution. And secondly, Diana Kiyalo is a land information and data specialist with over 5 years experience supporting marginalized communities in securing land rights. And she currently works as the data curator consultant with the Land Portal, building on previous roles with Kenya's Land Institution and UN Habitat. Diana will summarize session 1 to 4, while Louise highlights sessions 5 to 8. As you listen, please, I invite you to think about what has resonated with you most and put those comments in the chat. Over to you, Diana.
Thank you for such a awesome introduction and for also carrying us through the past 2 days, let me say 3 days. Taking through my reflections of the past 4 sessions, I have like 5 key points that have really connected with, or they have been recurring through the sessions that I participated in. One being the session on youth inclusion, another session on women and especially indigenous women, access to data, and also youth and technology, and more specifically on GIS. While these were very different sessions, I will just begin my points with what was the main overarching message through this conference. And one is that youth want to be included. They want a seat at the table, whether it's the climate dialogue, whether it's the land governance table. Everyone from the Southern African speakers to people from Southeast Asia, the message was clear that the young people want to be included. But what are these challenges that make it harder for us to be included in these tables? One, we also noticed that there is discriminatory, like institutional frameworks and also cultural systems. But looking towards COP30, one of the overarching discussions that people want to talk about is the global cooperation. That is one of the themes that will be discussed in COP30. So despite of having these discriminatory or challenges that make the youth not participate, and that one is just the systems, we are also not talking about the resources. We also realize that young people don't have the power, the influence, and also the monetary power that is required to make some of these changes. But despite all these challenges, one thing that comes out is we are willing to have that intergenerational kind of collaboration so that we can move this agenda forward. Also, another thing is the lack of resources. We also acknowledging that we need more of partnership, that is either private and public partnership, learning institution, and also the big kind of companies to cooperate so that we can do a lot of resource mobilization. Now, moving on to the other point was the role of women in climate agenda. And one of the powerful quotes we got was from Rukasen Biesi. And I'm not really familiar with indigenous communities or people from, sacred lands, but the powerful quote was, and I will just read it: protect sacred lands means protecting the sacred voices. We are seeing these women playing a very vital role in sharing and transferring knowledge, using powerful tools like storytelling, and also picking from one generation to another and trickling it down as a form of towards climate change adaptation. So another item that came was we also realized that there is patriarchy that is slowing the inclusion of women, the access of women, the access to land by women. And just to quote Antonio Luis, and this was a translated quote, I might have gotten it wrong, that we need to work with men, and so that they can be, it was translated to be more sensitive to gender issues. So this is not a journey for women by women, but it's also an inclusive journey that we need to soldier on together to get more women accessing land. We also realize that pastoral women, for example, indigenous women, there is a gap when we compare them to like urban women or women who have more education and etc. etc. One thing that I also took away from these sessions were we cannot look at women as an homogeneous group, but rather inside the women group, there are other groups that are need to be, their challenges are very specific, and they require specific kind of solutions. And I want to connect that, the role of women, the access to land rights, to my next point that came, and that was what happens beyond access to land. A question came from Samuel Mabike, and it was, what policies do we have in place that prevent young people from disposing their parcels maybe after you've inherited? How do we prevent that because of economic vulnerability? Now, going just to my previous points where we have indigenous women and pastoral women, we also realize that climate change is a real situation. It's a real challenge that is affecting livelihoods. And for example, when I look at pastoral women in the African context, and specifically maybe my country, we are seeing pastoral livelihoods have been affected. So how do we go beyond the traditional form of livelihoods that is derived from, let's say, pastoral, and embracing other alternative livelihoods without affecting the social and the cultural fabrics, and also without risking the women and also inserting them in situations like gender-based violence? That is something that we need to critically and collectively think about to address. Again, beyond access to land, looking at when we have access to land at the rural area, at the urban area, one of the common things was coming is, how do we make the most out of this land? So how do we, there's a question that was asked, sorry, I'll address it after this. Like, how do we, for example, how are we connecting youth with market linkages for whatever they are producing? How do we become more innovative and derive the most value from our lands, other than when we sell, and then we become landless, we become more economic, predisposed? So looking at land beyond access was something that has come up in those previous sessions. Then when we came to the session of GIS and technology, today we had sessions from Nigeria, for example, from a session from Paul Tomilola, who presented very good use of technology, Landsat data, how to derive the change that is happening in forests in Nigeria. But now we have to start asking the question of, how do we make this data to be very community-centered and like to be led by the people so that it makes sense? Globally, right now, we have tons and tons of data. But how are we making it useful to us? How are we converting this data to useful solutions? So for example, I have like a temporal change for what has happened maybe in the Congo Basin for the last 10, 15, 20 years. But how do I translate that to a community and to help them make decisions from that? So that is one of the questions that going to COP30 we need to think about, making this data very useful and also co-creating the solutions that we have with the communities whose lives will be touched by this.
Thank you.
Now to my final point is the question of climate funding in this agenda. In the beginning of the year, we saw a lot of changes in the development world, and we don't have that cushion that we used to have. Meshach, say from Elliot, asks this question: how do we mobilize communities when we have uncertainties? And this is something that will be discussed heavily on climate, on COP30. So I don't have the solutions. We also had so many uncertainties in the questions during the sessions. But again, being innovative and also partnerships, consortiums, I think could be a way forward for us. And over to you, Betty, and the team. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Diana. Now let me just quickly pass it on to Louis. Louis, over to you.
Thank you, Betty. Thank you, Diana. I will keep it short and sweet, and I will reflect on three main ideas that I captured during the opening session, and these were developed through these last 3 days. And the first one is a very, very important issue when we are talking about land. And land is such a cross-cutting issue that relates to climate, relates to urban poverty, relates to like climate risk, relates to economic challenges in general. So when we are talking about land, it's often common to take like a narrow look on the issue of tenure security. So I think one learning we have got from this conference is that we have to look beyond these paradigms and look for synergies in the struggles that are occurring in urban sectors for better conditions in housing, or and see the connection between what's happening in the rural areas and what's happening in the urban areas. As Liliana Quispe from the second presentation in the first day showed us. In this case, for example, let's remember that the urban youth was leading these training schools on agroecology. So we are saying here that the change is driven not only from the youth in the rural areas, but also from the connection that are being built from urban and rural. So, like, that takes me to the second point, that it is important to understand like the diversity that exists among youth. You know, like I have talked already of the urban-rural divide, but let's talk about the different conditions men and women have. And as Diana was saying, like within the group of women, we have to look for differences of caste and race. So this brings me to Becasella, like reflections on patriarchy and how patriarchy might be related with other systems of oppression. All these ideas on how are we understanding the multiple intersections of oppression. So this is very important, and this is also related with like this is still on my second point, and it's like how we build ties of solidarity. And for building those ties of solidarity between different groups facing different challenges and needing specific solutions, we need to position our own claims in relation to the claims that others are doing. So understanding that my own identity and my claims for identity recognition are part of a broader landscape of struggles, and to dare to think how can we build alliances with other groups. I think that's an important point. And my last point is on knowledge management and the critical position you should have on knowledge production, knowledge distribution. So the youth has access now to incredible technologies of mass diffusion. So the question is now, how are we going to use those to build powerful synergies between the groups I have already described? And this requires critical approaches to knowledge, and to be very reflective and be very open on how are we addressing the issues of making this information available, and more importantly, once we have the data, how are we going to build powerful discourses and narratives that mobilize relevant claims to different specific social groups.
Wow, thank you so much, Louis and Diana, for that insightful reflection. Indeed, alliance is very important. I just love the quotes that Diana also mentioned. I feel like just going back to rewatch all those videos. I love one particular comment in the chat from Lisa that says, throughout many sessions, I have noticed that despite the involvement of many different countries and cultures, certain challenges are common, such as the effect of climate change, gender inequality, and limited or no access to decision making for young people. It was very intriguing to notice these similarities all over the world and hear proposed solutions and actions. Indeed, it was very important. Now we've heard the reflection. Let's look ahead. And to help us look ahead, I have 5 distinguished panel members with us today. Together, with 5 of us, we're going to reflect on how the messages from this conference can connect to ongoing struggles and what actions are needed as we move towards COP30 and beyond. Please still keep the chats engaging. Let us know your reflections. We'll do well to read them out as well for the audience. Now, let me introduce my panel members. With me today, I have Nesadelia Ramirez. She is a young leader from Mexico, coordinating the youth movement of the Mesoamerican Alliance of Peoples and Forests, and the first woman to serve as a secretary of the Ejeda Commissariat in her community, where she champions youth and women participation in forest governance. The second person with us today is Atif Javed, based in India. He is a climate and sustainability advocate working across the Middle East and Asia Pacific, focusing on food systems, agriculture, climate finance, and technology. He also represents youth voices globally through Yongo and UNCCD Youth Constituency. Again, we have Mike Azonsop from Cameroon, who is a researcher and advocate with Ecosystem Development, focusing on land rights, indigenous knowledge, and climate justice, particularly with the Bazang people, and he works to amplify youth and indigenous voices in global land and climate decisions. Very interesting biographies. We also have Shimron Kipto, who is a development studies practitioner and indigenous people's rights advocate with the Chepkitale Indigenous People Development Project, where he supports community development, land rights, and youth empowerment. And the last person, not the least on our panel, is Mega Seth. It's a development communication professional working to amplify the voices of young women, pastoralists, indigenous youth, and smallholder farmers with a focus on land rights, gender justice, and climate resilience. Audience, wow, what a diverse group we have today. In the chat, just welcome them. Let's just welcome them. To begin with, now let's start with Nasedelia. As we look ahead, COP30 in Belgium will be a defining moment for centering indigenous voices, protecting forests, and ensuring that local actions shape global commitments. Your work with community Nasedelia on forest and youth leadership directly connects to these themes. How do you think key messages from this conference relate to your agenda and priorities as we approach COP30? Over to you. Nasedelia, if you're talking, you're muted. Great.
¿Escuchan?
Yes.
Bueno, hola a todos. Buenos días. Acá en México son las 7:30 de la mañana. Mi nombre es Nancedalia Ramírez Domínguez. Yo soy de una comunidad local que se llama Cordón Grande del sureste de México. Actualmente estoy coordinando el movimiento de juventud de la Alianza Mesoamericana de Pueblos y Bosques, así como también al movimiento de juventud de la Alianza Global de Comunidades Territoriales. Y bueno, contestando a la pregunta, creo que es importante mencionar que nuestra alianza pues es una coalición de comunidades indígenas con comunidades locales de diferentes partes del mundo, que abarca desde Indonesia, la cuenca del Congo, la cuenca amazónica, Brasil y Mesoamérica. Por eso es importante resaltar la parte de que a pesar de que hay una gran diversidad cultural, pues hay muchas similitudes entre todas las comunidades, no tanto comunidades indígenas como comunidades locales. Es decir, nosotros hemos creado demandas que son similares, que son luchas que compartimos en conjunto, como es una de ellas la defensa del territorio. Una de las principales demandas es la defensa del territorio, el derecho territorial, el acceso a financiamiento directo, el reconocimiento del conocimiento tradicional, el consentimiento libre, previo y informado. Y por lo tanto consideramos que todas estas demandas se alinean perfectamente con la COP30. Como dicen nuestros liderazgos, la COP30 tiene que ser la COP que regrese a la vida, ¿no? La COP de los bosques, la COP donde volvamos a tener esperanza, porque sinceramente las últimas COP para nosotros han sido pues un poco desalentadoras en el sentido que hemos visto que estas COP se han venido realizando para hacer negocios entre países, para hacer negocios entre empresas y donde para nada se están garantizando los derechos de las comunidades. Incluso hablándose de soluciones basadas en la naturaleza, como alianza, como jóvenes también, nosotros demandábamos, sí, es cierto, soluciones basadas en la naturaleza, pero también en las comunidades, porque sin las comunidades no hay protección, no hay conservación. Y prácticamente como jóvenes, pues estamos cumpliendo ese rol de poder seguir trabajando junto a nuestros liderazgos en la defensa de esas demandas, ¿no? Como bien lo dije, una de las demandas que tenemos es la protección a la vida, la protección de los defensores ambientales y considerando esto, creo que es importante que en esta COP podamos posicionar esto. Como juventud de la Alianza Global tenemos, claro, tres ejes, tres líneas, que es precisamente una de ellas el acceso al financiamiento directo, es decir, pues no consideramos que el financiamiento sea el resultado, sino más bien un medio para poder seguir fortaleciendo las iniciativas que ya se realizan en las comunidades, proyectos que ya están realizando los jóvenes en los diferentes territorios de las diferentes regiones. También el tema del conocimiento tradicional. Es decir, estamos trabajando mucho en proteger los saberes ancestrales, haciendo diferentes capacitaciones, diferentes talleres con los abuelos para que estos conocimientos pues, puedan ser transmitidos hacia los niños y se puedan ir protegiendo y se puedan ir transmitiendo a las futuras generaciones. Y también pues la defensa de la protección de la vida, ¿no? Queremos que se pueda garantizar que las decisiones globales reconozcan y apoyen, pues ahora sí que la defensa de los defensores ambientales. Sabemos que en Mesoamérica, por ejemplo, hay un alto índice de criminalización a defensores ambientales y dentro de ellos incluye mucho a personas de comunidades indígenas y de comunidades locales. México hace un par de años se encontraba en el primer lugar, ahora está dentro de los 3 primeros lugares, lo cual es muy desalentador. Y por ende, pues no ha habido un seguimiento a estos casos, no se ha hecho justicia en ninguno de los casos que se han suscitado, que han sucedido, y es por eso que como jóvenes, pues también estamos pues alzando la voz, ¿no? Sabemos que, bien decía uno de nuestros compañeros jóvenes, muchas veces ser activista para muchas personas es una elección, es algo que ellos eligen, deciden hacerlo y por eso nosotros no encajamos en ese término de ser activistas. Nosotros somos defensores ambientales porque desde pequeños no tenemos una opción de elegir. Es algo que tenemos que hacer sí o sí, porque estamos en el territorio, porque estamos defendiendo, porque nos están criminalizando, porque nos están amenazando, y entonces no es una opción para nosotros ser defensor ambiental. Es un deber, es una obligación que tenemos que hacer desde pequeños, desde que nacemos. Entonces es por eso que no entramos dentro de ese concepto de ser un activista, ¿no? Y creo que tiene mucho sentido, ¿no? El hecho de decir que hay una gran diferencia entre lo que sucede en las comunidades y lo que sucede en las ciudades, y es que en las comunidades siempre estamos siendo, pues, invisibilizados, siempre estamos siendo criminalizados, ¿no? Y entonces eso se trata, que dentro del marco de la COP también podamos visibilizar aquellas amenazas que nos enfrentamos, ¿no? Porque no podemos estar hablando de sostenibilidad, de sustentabilidad, si defender el territorio pone en riesgo la vida, pues, de quienes lo hacemos, ¿no? De igual manera, también pues impulsar la participación de los jóvenes en la toma de decisiones, sino pues, no solamente ser un parte escucha, sino fungir como actores claves pues para poder dar algunas soluciones, ¿no? Necesitamos pasar de discursos a compromisos reales, donde realmente se tome en cuenta a las juventudes y no solamente nos utilicen como una agenda, ¿no? Y retomando las palabras de mi hermana Sara Omi, de la MPB, es decir, los jóvenes y las mujeres no somos una agenda, somos sujetos de derecho y por lo tanto tenemos que estar en la toma de estas decisiones, ¿no? De estos acuerdos. De mi parte sería eso.
Wow. Wow, thank you. Very interesting. This COP should bring life, it should bring fruits. And young people, we are the key. Now, talking about young people, let's move to Mega. Following your engagement in the regional and global youth platforms, including the International Land Coalition of Young Leaders Fellowship, how do the key messages from this conference relate to your agenda as well and priorities for COP30?
Thank you, Betty. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. And it's been honor to be here. And I think over the past 2 days, we are hearing many powerful stories and also bold demands and concrete examples on how land justice is essential. And yes, I think these are the platforms, like you mentioned, the Land Coalition, International Land Coalition, or we can say Land Portal, or Majorc, or any other youth movement that provides a global platform for youth to raise their voices, to raise their concerns, to raise their lived experiences per se, and in solidarity from the young women, from the young indigenous women, from the young pastoralist herder. We all come together and exchange our ideas and learn from each other, explore the challenges, and as well as we as a youth not only talk about challenges because we are the torch bearer of our community, we are the guardians of our ancestral knowledge. So we don't see only on the challenges, but with the new narratives, with the new technological advancement, we do propose these solutions as well. But again, I think there are so many challenges who we need to address any time. And through this International Land Coalition, or currently I'm at the Nalini Forum taking place in Sri Lanka. And here we are also talking about how youth, and I think three major concepts or three major core themes that are emerging from all these global platforms is, and first of them is secure land tenure as a climate actions. And I must say that these three themes should be voices at the COP30. And again, the first is securing land tenure as a climate action. And this is the one strong message here, that securing land rights is not an optional. They are essential for climate actions. And being a youth, I think securing land tenureship is a key pillar for availing the climate actions. And I think at COP30, the priority is very clear. Climate mitigation and adaptation policies must recognize land tenure security as the one of the key theme. And for youth being underprivileged or under valued, belong to any of the group, I think this must be the land tenureship must be translated in the legal recognition with inheritance of land, inheritance of natural resources, and through the protection and such mechanism or prevent mechanism or protection mechanism should be there. The second theme that is again emerging is the lack of decision spaces and the lack of free and prior informed consent from the youth voices. And I think this is very again the issue that needs to be raised as a COP at a COP30, and this is the priority again. Um, because if we do it, we make the youth in a decision-making places, or we consider youth voices before any carbon trading or renewable energy or any such projects took place. Their consent will minimize the risk of that project, and that also with the local contribution, with the technical advancement of youth and with the free prior consent from the community and youth, all these projects is going to be a sustainable projects, and that will also enhance the local environment. And also the third priority and third demand from all the global youth is again the youth responsive climate finances, I think. Climate finance must be youth centric and engendered with young boys and girls, not just as a beneficiaries, but as the central actors. Our agenda at International Land Coalition Youth emphasize that climate funds, carbon credit schemes, and renewable energy investment must reach to those dependent on lands and other natural resources. So yes, I think these three are the main priorities and emerging themes that we, as a International Land Coalition and other Nalini Global Forum that I represent as a youth, we want to highlight at the COP30.
Wow. Interesting.
Thank you so
so
much.
much. Thank you so much for that insightful feedback from your end. Indeed, young people are the torch bearers. And allow me to read one comment from the chat from Marvin that says, youth must pursue civic mindedness and be open to use their voice in any available platform to push for governance reform pertaining to land rights. The apathy that prevails in our modern society will only prolong injustice and deterioration of social values of what is right and wrong. Values formation can instill a firm conviction of making a stand for truth and freedom. Wow. One thing I picked from this is governance, and this brings me to the next panel member I want to invite, who is Atif. We've heard a lot about how young people are, the issues young people are facing, and this conversation directly connects to global policy processes, talking about the UN conventions to national climate plans, where young constituencies are pushing to be heard. Atif, given your work with CSOs, Yongo, and UNCCD Youth Constituency, how do you, or should I say, how do the key takeaways from this conference align with priorities or policy priorities in these spaces? And looking at national plans, what's really in it for the young people? Atif, over to you.
Thank you, Betty. It's a privilege to be here and to be able to speak on this panel. And well, the connection between our work at the grassroots and the global policy sphere, it's more critical than ever. I will be going through and quickly shedding some lights on the key takeaways and the policy alignments, but moreover also how locally, nationally, and also at the global scale, the youths, the young people from the across the world, whether global south or global north, and also as well the others who are part of the process could contribute or learn. So the conversations we have had here at this conference on land and youth and the intersection of the climate directly inform the priorities the colleagues of us, and we are pushing in spaces within the UNFCCC or UNCCD and other conventions through the youth constituency we are part of and the CSOs, the civil society bodies. Well, I would like to highlight the first point. I mean, it's about elevating the land climate nexus. The conference, I mean, powerfully has highlighted how land is not just a victim of climate change, but central solution. We have to talk on the positive note how we can also make it into a more of a solution, or outcome-oriented solution. And this is exactly what we are advocating for. Our priorities include pushing for land-based solutions like agroecology, sustainable land management, and nature-based solutions to be integrated with the national climate plans, the national NDCs by the countries, and then by the parties it is presented at the convention for the inclusion in the text. And this is one of the important year specifically. Why? Because COP30 happening in Belém in Brazil, and the indigenous voices being heard is very important. And it is time to recognize the addressing the land degradation and the drought, and meeting the targets which we need to achieve. Second point, which is very important, which I would like to highlight as well, is the meaningful youth participation. Our work is not about being in a room or being able to have just having a table or a platform to speak, but rather getting the recognition which is long been not given. And specifically, that's what the youth caucuses and the youth constituencies enables us. We had seen it recently in the COP16 at the Saudi in Riyadh, how the Youth for Land initiatives were the steps to the right direction. And however, we must not forget, we're pushing for formal and sustained mechanisms for youth to contribute to policy drafting and not just listen to it. This means providing resources, building capacity, and ensuring that youth are at the negotiating table and not just on the sidelines, and taking it next year to Mongolia, definitely at COP17. And a few just quickly points on the policy that benefits the young people directly. Looking at the national plans, you may ask, what's in it for the youth? And how does it directly reflect on our ability to influence policy? Land is often the starting point for economic opportunity, and yet youth face significant barriers to access, whether we talk about Africa, whether we talk about South Asia, India, and all the subcontinent countries, and rest of the world as well. So few of the things we are focusing this year with a local conference in India is creating green jobs in the sector, like land restorations and sustainable agriculture fields, providing the secure land tenure and rights for young people, especially for young women who have not been getting the right recognition they need in the farming and agriculture sectors, in whether it's India, again, the global south and the regions. Also catalyzing the investment in youth-led eco-entrepreneurship and innovation, which is one of the very important program I may highlight of the G20 land initiatives under the UNCCD, Ecopreneur, and similarly like other big organizations which are working on. So these are some of the aspects I could share, and I would also give you just a story out of it, how basically policy can influence. So giving you an example from the Yongo, what we are currently working on is something called as Local Conference of Youth. So at Local Conference of Youth basically means that you are organizing a local conference on a local thematics and the problems which you're facing, whether it is disaster, the floods and the land degradations and deforestations, and bringing all these areas. And first and foremost point is the UN conventions might have different platforms and different teams are working, but then the youths of today and the children and all the voices have to come together. It's not a different conventions. All the 3-year convention, all the initiatives have to come to one platform, and that's what we're also focusing for at Brazil, the UNCCD, CBD, and UNFCCC, all the policy aspects and thematics to be presented there. So coming back to just on the LCOI part, we have brought in the small example on it. So we have included the biodiversity side of the networks and nexus, and as well as the land and also the climate. And we are bringing people from the regional levels of all over the India together to have the from the consultations, policies, and national statements and an input, and also like how and what problems they're facing. How do we address that? We prepare a recommendation set of statements together, and this is recommended to the country and the national offices. And because also we need to remember all the conventions UN are facilitators and not I mean they cannot do something and output for us because it's a party driven process, and for that we need to influence our governments and the institutions, and this inputs goes to the global youth stage, which is the COP this year at 30 in Belém. And this is all like a part of a process where the youth would get also a voice to contribute openly all across every area wherever you come from in your country, and to be heard at the stage at a global level as COP.
Wow.
So these are some of the instances. And one, yeah.
Wow, thank you so much
and one
for
quick
that.
example before I
I think that story was really powerful to just bring your session to a close. Even trying to respond to another question in the chat that spoke about what are we doing, what are young people doing in their own community to solve issues of land access. And now let me take this to Shimran here with us today. Beyond policies, beyond declaration that Atif just mentioned, conferences like this also leave us with personal reflections that shape how we act when we return home, right? Shimran, as someone deeply engaged in community development and youth empowerment, what is your personal takeaway from this conference and why? And looking ahead, what opportunities for actions do you see? Over to you, Shimran.
Yeah, thank you very much, Betty, and greetings to you all from wherever you're joining us from. I think before maybe I start is just to mention a few before, just to mention that aside from the very beautiful biography that you just read, I would want to mention that I'm also part of the Youth on Land Multi-Stakeholder Platform in Africa, which of course a partner in this conference, the ILA, is a host to it. And of course, also talking about COP30, I have the privilege of representing the indigenous youth in the Indigenous Peoples Commission, representing the international indigenous youth on climate change. As we continue with this, we are championing for governance, access to land, and all this. As we all in this, we need to be party to that. Any man who sells their land sells the future of their own children. Land is so sacred to us, and we don't own land. Our land owns us. I think if we get that fact right, then I think all other things would follow. From it we came, and to it we shall return. So attending this conference has really felt to me as I would put it in two aspects. One, a mirror, and the second one is a map. Yeah, it's very weird how that would be. But then, as a mirror, I saw the struggles and the values of my community, be it land as identity, and the need for communal protection, the land tenure protection for us, the centrality of youth in land, which are not isolated. We as the young leaders from various regions, joining in from Asia, from Africa, spoke in the same language. That land is cultural memory, livelihood, and a site for climate resilience, just as alluded from yesterday's session. The recognition matters. It validates the idea I carry home, our local stories, and the powerful evidences that we have shared the global in this conversation can be taken to the global stages. The aspect that I would want to talk about is on the map. This conference has offered very concrete pathways. We have just witnessed the digital tools that have been employed and deployed by the youth in this conference, the networks that we have shared, and the advocacy windows that have been provided for us here to help us translate, and of course to translate our stories, experiences, not just to leave it at this point, but of course to push it to an influence, to make it influential. What mostly struck me was the emphasis of what the youth have produced, the evidences that they have produced, the straightforward sessions that they have shared, which were of course facilitated by my fellow young people. That brought a lot of joy and energy to me. I think for me, this conference has really been important as I come to a close. It has reminded me that returning home is not the end. It is where the most important things and work begins. Capacity building, turning principles into bylaws, and of course, turning networks into resourcefulness.
Wow.
And just going into the opportunities that lie ahead of us as we get into the global and the regional advocacy areas. We have COP30 that is coming ahead, and we have other regional opportunities that can be explored. And of course, going back to the community, whatever that we have, the opportunities that we have had in these sessions, we can take it to the community level for action and localize them to the benefit of those whom we serve. I think I would leave it at that. Thank you very much, Betty. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Shimran. That was indeed very insightful. And thank you for highlighting technology. And I loved your quote, says we don't own land, our land owns us. Now this takes us to Mike. We've also heard how Indigenous knowledge and community voices are vital for shaping culture and climate and land justice. Mike, drawing from your work with the Bedzang people and your advocacy for youth and Indigenous rights, what is your personal takeaway from this conference and why? And what opportunities for action do you see as we move forward?
Thank you, Betsy. Good afternoon to each and everyone from Cameroon. As you've earlier said, I'm Mike Azonsop. And my passion lies with connecting grassroots realities with global conversations on land as this one and climate justice. Before I start, let me give you a personal story. My own journey into land and climate actions started in my home country, that's Cameroon. Some years ago, I had the privilege to work closely with the Bedzans. That is the less regarded, less recognized indigenous group in the whole of Central Africa. So seeing how their ancestral land were threatened by unsustainable use, unsustainable exploitation, and how their voices were often ignored in local, national, and international decision-making spheres, deeply inspired me to dedicate my work to land rights and climate justice. For me, this is not just an academic or professional field. It is a personal commitment to justice, dignity, and survival. It is a personal commitment to justice, dignity, and personal survival. For the past month, since we began reflecting on climate, on land justice and climate change resilience, I have been inspired by the energy and clarity of youth voices. We stood out to me and in different regions to share similar challenges: land insecurity, climate crisis, and the marginalization of youths, and more specifically indigenous youths in governance. Youths are not taken into consideration. If they're often taken, they are in a minor number. But I also had strong opportunities. One opportunity is the power of digital tools, from participatory mapping to online advocacies. We can give communities visibility and help bridge the gap between local realities and global decision-making space. Another one is strengthening intergenerational dialogue. Many communities already have indigenous traditional knowledge that are very resilient, to our land use, resilient to our climate justice systems, and including this space, using space like COP20, land rights and climate actions cannot be. We have to understand that looking ahead highlights opportunities. As we look towards COP30 and beyond, I believe youth and indigenous communities should not only limit themselves to being invited to share their stories, but also to shape policies and commitments that emerge from these spaces. And that decision-taking should at the helms. If you permit, I will try to link this to a phenomenon that really touched me. That was the 2025 theme on the International Indigenous Day, where the theme was oriented to AI. AI is a good thing. It is a tool that came as emerging, but I was really perplexed. I was like, how can we go talking about AI to people that don't know of the existence of a phone, or to people that have never seen a laptop that I'm using right now? You really see the gap between decisions taken at the helm and the realities of the field. So spheres like this one should be where we, the youths, more specifically indigenous youths, come together to share knowledge and make sure that the realities on the field are taken at the helm, and the decisions are taken at the helm do meet. Also, after this, what next? What goes beyond? One, strengthening grassroots participation so community have tools to defend their rights over land. That is, we have been struggling. I will try to personalize it to the Bejan concept. We have been struggling for the past years, though with limited resources, financial, human, to see how these people, these communities, these local communities can be heard, to see how their voices can be heard, to see how their traditional knowledge can be kept. That decisions we should lose a bottom-top and not a top-bottom approach. One. Two, building strong coalitions between youths and indigenous people so our voices go louder and harder. By so, I believe that they won't be ignored.
Yeah.
Three, transforming commitments into actions. transforming all what have been said here into action. We should be able to, like what I heard, the session I participated on the GIS in Nigeria. It was an incredible session. But youth must capitalize on such actions. You should capitalize on such actions that what is promised at the international forum or for us at this one aligns with the realities on the field and actually are implemented. We should not be as some of our governments that they take laws and the laws on the paper, and the realities we see different things.
Can you wrap up for us, Mike?
Yeah. Actually, I was about to conclude. So that said, I think with this, we're going to do an incredible job. Thank you. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much for that brilliant submission. I think that's very important, and your stories are really to heart. I love the chats that are coming in. I just want to read out one or two of those. One from Patricia says, I do hope that we all understand how the social movements in Brazil are working together, building alliances among the different identities, but also generations. Belém will be our space to push forward a change in the way we think and work across movements and at different levels, but focusing on the central role of women at all levels and identities. And Felicia also says, it is rather a comment, but she says, very timely topic and impactful too. However, all youth need to be aware of this program, even at the rural level, not just some sessions of youth in African countries. And this is what Mike said, which really, really resonate. Now, allow me to bring in Diana and Louise to respond to these two questions in the chat. The first question says, how can we encourage young people not to abandon their land and instead cultivate them and seek better ways to make the land productive, which is economical enough to make a living, provided that local governments are supporting the youth to stay in the countryside for development? Diana, do you mind responding to this question?
Kindly rephrase the question for me, Betty. I have technical challenges.
So how do we encourage youth not to abandon their land and instead cultivate them and seek better ways to make them productive?
Just for me, the question begins is, why are they abandoning it? We see a lot of rural youth moving from the rural in urban, despite having acres, to seek a better future, more opportunities, for example. And I speak for the context of Africa. We also see even the ones in peri-urban moving. So one, if, for example, in my case, I go and cultivate maize and beans in the small parcel of land maybe I've been awarded by my father, how much can I generate from that? If I eat, for example, and the remaining I sell, will it, for example, if I have a family, will it provide school fees for my kid? Will it give me a vacation or something, etc., etc.? So it's the question for me is the value we are deriving. If we have, maybe you can derive like 60 bags of maize or even 100 bags of maize. Where are you selling them? Do you have access to the right markets? The right markets that will give you like the value that you wish to derive. Another question is, do you have the knowledge and the skills to be able to use this land to give you the best output of it? So the short answer will be, can we expose youth to economies that they can sell whatever they are deriving? Also, can we give a lot of agricultural support so that we can derive again the best value from the land that we can? Thank you.
Wow, thank you very much for that. And now, before I go to Louis, allow me to bring in Nancedelia. There's a question in the chat that says, what concrete projects or initiatives are you implementing in your community to advance youth access to land? Do you want to respond to this for us, Nancedelia? Nancedelia, if you're talking, you're muted.
Ok, bueno, muchas gracias. Sí, bueno, hay muchas actividades o iniciativas que se están desarrollando en los territorios. Por supuesto, hablando de la Alianza Global, desde Indonesia hasta Mesoamérica, en diversos temas. El primero que tiene que ver con la conservación de la biodiversidad. Hay muchos proyectos donde los jóvenes participan en el monitoreo de fauna silvestre. Por ejemplo, México. En México hay una especie que se encuentra en nuestros territorios que se encuentra en peligro de extinción, que es el jaguar. Entonces, desde hace más de 15 años hemos desarrollado un proyecto para monitorear esta especie, identificar los lugares donde se encuentra y pues de esa manera poder encontrar alternativas, mecanismos que sigan protegiendo a esta especie, ¿no? Aprendemos a cohabitar con estas especies que son importantes para la madre tierra, para la naturaleza, y entonces trabajamos proyectos que tienen que ver con eso, ¿no? Y que a su vez están alineados con el tema de la tecnología, ¿no? Utilizando herramientas tecnológicas para poder hacer ese monitoreo, y es justamente donde los jóvenes están participando, ¿no? Trabajamos también el tema de soberanía alimentaria en muchos de los territorios. El día de ayer estuvo en la sesión Nidia, que es de una organización de mujeres, es joven, y que trabajan sobre todo específicamente pues el tema de soberanía alimentaria, el rescate de las semillas, protegiendo pues el conocimiento tradicional y ancestral de nuestras abuelas sobre todo. También utilizamos las tecnologías para poder proteger el territorio de diversas amenazas. Por ejemplo, en Guatemala, en ACOFOP, una de nuestras organizaciones, ellos utilizan los drones para poder monitorear y controlar el tema de incendios forestales. A través de esta tecnología es mucho más pues, efectivo y reduce mucho el índice de los incendios forestales en la región, ¿no? Sobre todo porque se encuentran dentro de la reserva de la biosfera maya. También esta tecnología sirve y nos ha funcionado mucho para poder proteger el territorio de las invasiones, ¿no? Sobre todo que se vienen dando mucho en los territorios, sobre todo en territorios donde no hay todavía una tenencia de la tierra, hay una gran serie de amenazas y que tiene que ver mucho con las invasiones, ¿no? La tala clandestina, sobre todo. Y estas herramientas permiten poder tener esa vigilancia, ¿no? Hay diferentes comités que se conforman por las comunidades donde se encargan de proteger, pues, digamos, proteger el territorio. Y dentro de ellos están los jóvenes, están las mujeres también participando. También utilizamos la tecnología, pues, para crear redes de comunicación indígena y de comunicación comunitaria. En la mayoría de las organizaciones hay redes de comunicación que se encargan precisamente pues de poder visibilizar la labor que cumplen las comunidades para poder proteger pues a la madre tierra, pero también de visibilizar las amenazas. En muchos de los casos estas redes de comunicación nos han ayudado a protegernos, a proteger nuestra propia vida, porque desgraciadamente, por ejemplo, en México hay un dicho que dice si no se sabe no pasa, y es decir, si la gente no sabe a través de la comunicación que está sucediendo algo en el territorio, quiere decir que todo está bien y que no está pasando nada. Entonces, por ello la importancia de visibilizar a las comunidades, de saber que está sucediendo algo, tanto bueno, tanto malo, pues para poder protegernos de alguna manera. Y también una de las actividades que se realiza mucho es el tema de la educación, desde la cosmovisión indígena, desde los saberes tradicionales de comunidades locales. En Indonesia hay un proyecto que se llama Vuelve a casa, donde los jóvenes están regresando de las ciudades donde se fueron para poder pues buscar nuevas oportunidades, pero que de alguna manera fueron perdiendo un poco su identidad. Ahora están regresando a las comunidades para enseñar a los niños, digamos, su cultura, para que los niños pues no pasen por la misma situación que pasaron ellos, para que se pueda proteger la lengua materna y desarrollando algunas iniciativas, algunos proyectos. Tenemos una escuela en Mesoamérica, que es la Escuela Mesoamericana de Liderazgo, donde los jóvenes desarrollan capacidades técnicas de liderazgo, de identidad y pues básicamente de proteger nuestros saberes. Entonces son unas de las iniciativas que estamos realizando.
Okay.
estamos trabajando.
Very interesting. Thank you so much for those really insightful, practical examples. Indeed, if we don't know, then it doesn't happen. I believe that's what relates to what the land portal is doing. Now, allow me to bring in Louis, just in a very short sentence. Can you let us know how, and your work with respect to what you're doing, the land portal creates access to land for young people? Louis. Louis, if you're talking, you're muted.
Sorry, I was having a technical issue as well. Like, could you repeat the question, please?
Okay, so the question is, with respect to the work you do with the land portal, how have you enabled access to land for young people?
Well, in the land portal, we do, I would say, three main things. Like, we open the access to information in order to enable better informed debates. So with doing this, we want the youth to have better information to participate in those scenarios of decision making. But like this opening up the information is only the first step. So once the information is open, is where like the challenge for the youth starts, because it is a matter of analyzing that information and connecting that information with the developmental challenges that the youth want to address. We have discussed here that those development challenges are diverse. So we are just like providing the first, like the seed, which is the information. The second thing we do is debating that information. So in collaboration with many different scholars from different academic traditions, we discuss the key issues around land tenure. This is land tenure security, the connection between land tenure security and climate change, and how like these land challenges are also manifested in rural areas. So by engaging with those scholars, we like advance in the journey from information to knowledge. So we hope the youth can also engage in that knowledge building process to kind of take from what the scholars are saying and transforming those insights into relevant knowledge that they can apply in their local context. Again, and I go back to the central ideas. Like, these require a very critical approach to knowledge from youth, to highlight the diversity of claims around land that could exist even within a single community, from men, from women, and kind of build a common narrative that prioritizes the most vulnerable and build around that vulnerability a powerful agenda that could transform the realities, not only for the most vulnerable, but for like society as a broad.
Wow. Thank you so much for that, Louis. If we do not know, then it doesn't happen. We've just reflected. I know the questions still keep on pouring. The panelists, please do well to respond to the questions in the chat. And if you have any further thoughts, please comment them in the chat. We have to wrap the session. It's very engaging, but we have to bring it to a close. As we have reflected, it's also very important that we look ahead. We forge ahead. And for that matter, allow me to invite Romisato to share with us the next steps from this conference and the way forward. Romisato is a research and knowledge lead at the Land Portal Foundation with 2 decades of experience in land governance, open data, and community forest management across South America, Asia, and Europe. Romy, over to you.
Thanks, Betty, and thanks everyone for joining us in this 3-day conference. It's been an enormous challenge to put this together, but a very rewarding experience for us. It took us months to prepare for these 3 days. We really appreciate your presence. And I'm very happy with the results, very happy with this wrap-up session. We were not sure in the beginning when we thought about bringing these topics together, young people, climate change, land. We were really wondering, is that going to make sense? Will that resonate with people? Of course, we know there are a lot of interlinkages between these aspects, and with young people playing a leading role in these challenges, in the causes that can take us to a more sustainable future. But it was still a challenge for us to think, are we going to be able to clearly articulate that for the conference? Well, we realized that we didn't have to do so much that part of the job, because young people themselves took this opportunity and really made a lot of sense out of these enormous challenges and topics for us these days: land rights, increasing access to land, to information that also will allow them to have better access to land, and in this context of climate change. So we are very happy for young people to have taken up this stage that we really would like to continue offering. And for that, we hesitated at some point to even prepare like a declaration out of this conference, but we did have a conversation in our teams that we don't want to just come up with another declaration that may not add value. But even though this is also not, this is also an option that we can consider for the future, but we do want to explore a bit better these options. And as we would like to continue also offering this kind of space, online global space, because in preparing for this conference, we realized in the beginning, we were really even thinking, will people even apply for the sessions? And well, big surprise, we had nearly 70 applications for sessions. Can you imagine? So for those of you who had the opportunity to lead sessions, this is really, I think, a great opportunity. And we want to continue providing this kind of space. So we would like to fix a meeting over the coming weeks to follow up from this conference, a meeting with partners that also supported us throughout these months to make this happen, and also to extend this invite to any individuals here who would also like to join us in this effort going forward in continuing providing these kind of spaces. Concretely, how could that take shape? It probably it could take shape in renewing this kind of conference next year, or maybe even holding a series of other meetings, or even other ideas can come up. So we would be very keen to hear a bit more from you, and also to see where we can all together contribute also with resources, be it your time, your ideas, to continue providing that space. That's what we heard a lot from session organizers, the appreciation for the possibility to take this stage, which is different, still important for the meetings that are happening face to face. But I think having this kind of global stage in preparations for a lot of the meetings that you will have face to face is also something that they don't find as much out there. So thank you again to all of you. Thanks to my colleagues here for all the efforts that we put in, Betty, the team of interpreters, and all the participants. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Romy. Audience, please don't leave yet. We are not done. We'd like to invite Child Tommy to just give us a closing remarks before we bring the conference to a wrap.
Thank you, Betty. And I want to thank all the participants, the panelists, the partners, and my colleagues. My sincerest thanks and gratitude to all of you for making the last 3 days a reality. This would have not been possible without the support and dedication of you, the youth. You are charting a pathway to mainstream the issues discussed over the last 3 days on international fora. You have shared your reflections. You have explored land as identity. You have reflected on the role of the youth in mitigating climate change and improving access to land. And you have asked how you can contribute to making the world a fairer and more just place in future. This closing panel offers a powerful conclusion and a clear agenda for the way forward. And this has been very inspiring and humbling. So from my side, all I can say is that the Land Portal will continue to work on breaking down barriers to knowledge. And as a globally certified public good, we will continue to work to make access to data, information, knowledge, a public infrastructure with public value and utility. And collectively, we will continue to be a catalyst to share youthful narratives, youthful experiences, and to impact that global agenda. You have declared this conference to catalyze a community, to work towards a collective statement of intent, a call for recognition, and to be a roadmap for the voice of the youth. I therefore implore you to continue to participate, to not give up, and to continue to shape how knowledge is created and contested. Challenge our perceptions of how digital technologies can be used to amplify your voices and show us new ways to engage with information. You have engaged fully. You have listened deeply. You have brought new energy and innovation here. Your peers have highlighted the challenges, named the issues, and suggested pathways. Together, we as the Land Portal will continue to support you, to continue your journey as partners, as leaders, and as change makers that can shape the present and alter the future. So follow up with us, hold us accountable, hold each other accountable. Demand more from us, but demand more from yourselves as well. And never give up. I thank you.
Wow, thank you so much. Demand more from us and demand more from yourself. And this brings us to the end of the closing plenary. Friends, this conference has shown us that youth are not only the future, but the present drivers of change in land and climate governance. Together, we've lifted stories from indigenous communities. You've heard my personal stories. You've heard the stories of other people here, from rural innovators, land defenders, and youth leaders worldwide. On behalf of the Land Portal and all the partners, Youth Initiative for Land in Africa, Global Alliance of Territorial Communities, Espesofe Meneza, the Invisible Thread, Asian NGO Coalition of Agrarian Reform and Rural Development, Connection La, and Witness Radio. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for participating. Thank you to the speakers, the participants who raised your voices. As we close, let's remember that this conference has been about a lot. It has been about inspiring ourselves. It has been about sharing knowledge and experiences. It has been about translating them into action. It has been about representation. It has been about a lot. It has also been about connection, resources, networking, and the list goes on. Don't forget to visit the Land Portal conference page at landportal.org to access more information and follow them on their social media pages. It's Land Portal. You can access a lot of information and more on the conference and beyond. My name is Betty Ej, and it has been an honor to serve as your moderator today. With that, I officially close the 2025 Land and Youth Digital Conference. Thank you. Dankeschön.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Muito obrigada.
Thank
Muchas
you.
gracias.
Muchas
Merci.
gracias.
Grand merci.
Everyone.
Goodbye, everyone. Nos vemos pronto.
Thank you.